Welcome to Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I am solo, so please get your comments coming in via Twitter, Facebook and YouTube, where we will be asking the question, if any players want to leave Celtic, what should we do? Because it sounds as though, going by reports, that there are up to 5 first-team Celtic players who are looking to leave the club. The list that was doing the rounds on WhatsApp included Chris Ajer, Olivier Ntcham, Karamoko Dembele, Ryan Christie and Bolingoli. Which of these players would you be quite happy to let go, and who would you be trying to turn around and make stay at Celtic Park? Let's go right straight to the comment section, and we'll work through as many comments as possible, starting off with Jared Hill. Ntcham, Ajer, if the media are correct, probably Rogic and Karamoko too, since they're not getting games. Well, looking at, as I say, WhatsApp messaging last night, Jared, it looks as though Ajer, Ntcham, Dembele, Christie and Bolingoli are the 5 players. I mean, Dembele's been left out of the last couple of first team squads. And the chat around Celtic Park and those in the know is that he has actually asked for a transfer. So he's a young kid, 17 years of age, and I'm pretty sure he has been influenced by whoever his agent is at this moment in time, for one so young. And it looks as though we're going down the same route as Islam Feruz when it comes to Dembele. I think he's been nurtured pretty well by the club since making his development debut at the age of 13. But unfortunately, he doesn't want to play for Celtic any longer. So if that is the case, as we have said a couple of times on A Celtic State of Mind, I think it's time, regardless of the talent or the age or the prospect that he might be, then it's time for him to go. And I would say the same for most of the others, but my biggest concern is losing Ajer, Ntcham and Christie. Bolingoli, that's a dead rubber. He's got to go anyway for reasons outside of football. His, obviously, indiscretions have been well reported, so he's on his way out anyway. But out of the 3 players, Ajer, Ntcham and Christie, are there any within those 3 that we need to keep in order to keep our 10 in a row dream on track? Now, as I say, I'm going out solo today, so I'm going to work through all of your comments. A Celtic State of Mind started just over 3 years ago. Kevin Graham and I around the kitchen table, and we've progressed up to the point where we now have our own studio. It's a State of Mind Studios in Dalkeith, A Celtic State of Mind being the flagship show. But there are other shows that we're working on. If you want to get involved, then get in touch. If you've got an idea for a podcast, get in touch. We are showing the premiere of a non-football related podcast tonight called The Salt and Sauce Show. It's on at 6 o'clock and it's going to be shown on YouTube, A State of Mind's YouTube channel. If you're tuning in via YouTube, make sure you register and subscribe. Everything we do is free of charge. So on to the next question. It is indeed Mr. Graham, Kevin Graham. Good to hear from you, sir, and you will be joining us at the weekend for the game as well, Kevin. If it's true Ajer and Ntcham agents have asked for valuations, then we need to listen to offers unless it can be talked round. Problem is, the books need balanced after our defeat midweek. Well, this is the thing. It all comes down to what's happened during the week. A good result against Ferencváros would have changed everything, but we're sitting here not only licking our wounds after that surprise defeat. It's got to be said it was a surprise defeat, but we're now hearing of mutiny in the camp. And just looking back on the now infamous interview that was given by Neil Lennon, he was talking, first and foremost, he was devastated. He was devastated, as we all were, after getting bounced out of the Champions League once again before the group stages, long before the group stages, it's got to be said. And although he took responsibility for the team selection, and to be fair, I think he had to, he said, "I'm sick of seeing us making basic defensive mistakes." Now, if we're making basic defensive mistakes, then surely selling one of our prized assets at this moment in time would be a mistake. Christopher Ayer comes in for some criticism by some sections of the Celtic support. I'm a big fan of Ayer. I think he's not the finished article yet, certainly, but it's going to be difficult under the current circumstances, having gone out of the Champions League. It's going to be difficult if AC Milan are prepared to offer a reported £27 million. Is he worth £27 million? Would you sell? Make your comments via Twitter, Facebook and YouTube, and we will work through them as we go through the show. Neil Lennon went on to say some of their attitudes have to be better. That's a concern. If they're making waves to leave the club, they are obviously not committed. It's been bugging me for a long, long time, hence the headline. Which players are bugging Neil Lennon, and should we let them leave? Well, I had heard the names that came out last night. I'd already heard those names. I'm delighted that the likes of Callum McGregor isn't part of that, because I think he is as important as anyone in the Celtic squad as we go ahead to try and regain our composure for the game against Motherwell. The bread and butter. Has it always been 10 in a row? Probably. But to get knocked out of the Champions League so early has been severely disappointing for myself, for all Celtic fans. And it sounds as though we don't learn our lessons. Last season against Cluj, we started the game with Callum McGregor at left back, one of our finest offensive talents playing at left back. And we had a new left back on the bench, £3 million, Bolingoli. Criticism was levied at Lennon, and I think rightly so at that time. We also had Julien on the bench. Now, this time round, we start off with no recognised striker, and Ayeti and Klimala are sitting on the bench, and that really is a huge error, and I think Neil Lennon's taken that on the chin. It will be interesting to hear your views on how we should line up against Motherwell on Sunday. Obviously, we've signed David Turnbull from the aforementioned Motherwell. What's your thoughts on David Turnbull? And also, what we would also look at is Shane Duffy, still linked to Celtic. Is that deal dead? Are we still going to go ahead and try and purchase him? Is it more important now than ever, particularly when we're looking at Ayer? Scott Brown's come out and he's played down Neil Lennon's claims about mutiny in the camp. He certainly hasn't heard anything. And we're looking also at reports this morning that Brendan Rodgers is, flying around Celtic Park like a vulture, and he's in the hunt for Callum McGregor. So what's your thoughts on that? And one player who we mentioned after the game because he was missing was Odsonne Edouard. I don't think anyone wants to see Edouard leave. Is that now a possibility since we've been bounced out of the Champions League? Let me know your thoughts, and we'll be with you for at least half an hour. Some people are looking at Neil Lennon out. Chaz Buchan certainly is looking to remove Lennon from the manager's chair. Is that an option? Do you think at this stage of the season, going for 10 in a row, that would be the wisest move? And even if Lennon was to move, who would replace him? It would be a topsy-turvy season indeed. It already has been. Red Scotland, thanks for getting involved. Regardless of who the players are, sell them immediately and replace them with proper quality. This is the duty of the board. Neil cannot be left with his arse hanging out the window, nor can the fans. Well, I think we were looking at who was to blame for the Champions League debacle the other night. And we looked at the board because we feel that, deals aren't getting across the line as soon as they should be, particularly for the Champions League qualifiers. These are the types of players we should be buying in January. We always seem to be at the tail end trying to get the squad together and trying to scrape through the qualifiers so that we can get into the Champions League riches. This season and last season, we've come up short. And of course, when we're looking at the devastating impact on a financial level, it's a catch-22. So the players we brought in January, Klimala and Sorrell, aren't anywhere near the first team. They were both on the bench the other night against Ferencvaros. Were we wise not to even play Klimala and let him run the defence for 60 minutes before perhaps replacing him with the new signing Ayeti? If Klimala's not ready, and he was signed in January, he's been with the club for 7 months, if he's not ready now, will he ever be ready? And if not, then he needs to move, and we need to get another striker in who we can actually utilise not only domestically but also in Europe, because we still have a European campaign to speak of, albeit the Europa League. The other issue that I've kind of got at the moment is, where is Lee Griffiths? Where is Griffiths? Because he's another striking option, a very good striking option when he's playing, but he's disappeared from view. Will we see him returning to the squad on Sunday? Will he give us a better option than Ryan Christie taking corner kicks? 17 corners in the last 2 games. Nothing came from any of the corners, and we know that Lee Griffiths certainly is the best corner kick taker and one of the best dead ball experts at Celtic Park. Are you concerned about the fact that Ryan Christie's been named in that list of players who perhaps want to leave the club? I certainly am. I thought Christie, certainly looking at his dedication and his commitment on the field of play, looks as committed as anyone at this moment in time. Let me know what you think of his performances. Now, we've got more messages coming in, and coming in through Periscope via Twitter. Let's move on and concentrate on the 10. Well, we have absolutely no option than to do that total, messaging us through Twitter. But I think as a Celtic supporter, we should be in the group stages of the Champions League. That's certainly my ambition season on season. And more often than not, we're failing to do that. So it looks like a European regression when you certainly look at the last 2 campaigns in Europe, and I think that's the biggest concern. We have no other option than to concentrate on 10 in a row. We know how important that is in any case, but in order to build on that, in fact, in order to ensure that happens, we need to keep our best players. And in the aftermath of the Ferencváros game, it would appear that some of our best players are unhappy. Neil Lennon's certainly unhappy as well. How's that all going to pan out? Once you're in a situation like that, can you ever get them back on side? As a manager, would you be fearing for your own position? A few people are saying Lennon has to leave himself. I would hope that's not the case, because then obviously the whole club are thrown into disarray this early in the season. Next up is Jed Sweeney, and you're commenting via YouTube, Jed. It's great to have you back on the show. At least Eddie's got the balls to fight for the 10. I think he does have. I think Eduard was one of the names I mentioned as being perhaps unhappy at Celtic after the game, and I based that simply on the fact that he wasn't in the squad. Not that I'm calling anyone a liar, but obviously, you know, we've had Lee Griffiths dropping out the squad due to a calf strain, and then Eduard dropping out the squad due to a groin strain. And I was hoping that was the case. There's obviously been a lot of speculation around Eduard in relation to a move to Aston Villa. The quoted figures are things around the £35 to £40 million mark. Would Celtic see that as a carrot that would allow us to balance the books after being bounced out of the Champions League? Perhaps they would. I would be devastated. I know that a lot of other Celtic fans would be devastated. And to be honest with you, I don't think Aston Villa is the right move for Odsonne Eduard. You see the talent that we had in Moussa Dembele. Is Eduard any less of a talent than Dembele? Different types of players, granted, but is he any less of a talent than Dembele? I don't think he is. And I don't think the Aston Villa would be the move for Eduard. If he goes down there, there's the possibility of him disappearing. Not quite into obscurity, but there's so many players down south who disappear, and I mean 9, 10, 11 goals probably is all you'll be looking for at Aston Villa, a club who certainly are not going to be pushing for a top 6 place. So I think we need to do everything in our power to keep Eduard. My opinion on the players mentioned, Christopher Ajer, I'd like to see Ajer staying. However, if he has made it known, and Neil Lennon said over the last 6 months some players have been making moves to leave Celtic Park. If Ajer is one of those players, and he's a guy who we picked up for a nominal fee from Norwegian football, we have persevered with him. We've put him out to Kilmarnock to get him game time within the hurly-burly Scottish game. We've moved him from midfield to defence. Celtic have been a massive part in Christopher Ajer's development. Ronny Deila first of all, moving on to Brennan Rodgers, and now Neil Lennon has to take some credit also for Ajer's development. If that boy wants to leave at this stage of his career when he's not the finished article, and someone like AC Milan may be prepared to pay in the region of £27 million I would say any offer over £25 million would be good business for Celtic. Under the current situation, having lost out in the Champions League riches, I would say that would be a good move for all concerned. Shane Duffy, I would expect that deal to be somewhere down the line. Get it completed. If it costs us a few quid more and Ayer is the make weight in that deal, then get that deal completed. And obviously, it would see us through the pandemic and the issues that has created financially. Olivier Encham, he's a player that I admire greatly. I don't think he's a first pick. And if he's unhappy because he's been in and out of the side, again, it all goes down to the transfer fees that have been mentioned. I've heard £20 million for Encham. Again, I take it. We've just signed David Turnbull. I'm not saying it's a like-for-like replacement, but obviously that shores up any issues of personnel leaving from the midfield areas. Dembele. I've already said Karamoko Dembele should really be counting his chickens at this moment in time, that he's at a club like Celtic. He's done nothing yet. Simple as that. We go on about Dembele being this prodigious talent, and at the moment he has done absolutely nothing. Every single appearance he's made in the first team, albeit aged 16 and 17, has been fleeting. And for me, he's shown nothing at that level that he's going to be a player that's going to be forcing his way into the first team this season. So I think he should really take stock of his career. I think he should look at the likes of Islam Farouz, who thought the grass was greener, and it certainly wasn't for him. And Dembele should really start thinking about what Celtic have done for him and his development over the last few years. However, if he wishes to go, then you let him go. And then obviously he can find his level elsewhere. Bolingoli's got to go. We've said that. We've dedicated a whole podcast to Bolingoli. The way he's let down the club, himself, his teammates, and probably most importantly, us as supporters. So Bolingoli has got to go. And if we've got a means of transferring him out permanently, let's do that. And let's back up the left-back position. There was talk about us bringing in left-backs. Barry Douglas has been mentioned, as has Aaron Hickey. Now, we know from various sources Hickey's not coming to Celtic, and that basically comes down to the package that Bologna were able to offer him. So that won't be happening. There are other left-backs being quoted. We certainly need a first pick, and I think Greg Taylor would be the backup. Probably most concerningly, out of all the names mentioned, is Ryan Christie. And what I would say about that is if Neil Lennon can work on his management with Christie, then he needs to. He needs to keep Ryan Christie at the club, and he should actually get a new deal, because obviously, you know, we don't want that to wind down and for us to lose the player when he's obviously a very valuable asset. Moving on to some more of the messages. One coming in from Gary Doonan via Facebook. Definitely Ayer, as his agent has been pushing for 6 months. I'm sure we could do without him and we will get by. What do you think? Will we get by without Ayer at this moment in time? I would be inclined to agree with Gary, as long as we can bring in even someone like Shane Duffy. I think we're a wee bit short at the back, and the defensive frailties of the other night were the reason why we got knocked out of Europe, quite frankly. You look at the first goal, the boys in acres of space. Scott Brown actually moved to the left, which was the wrong thing to do, and it created more space for him to shoot. Greg Taylor's on the wrong side of him, if you consider that he's the left back. He's on the right hand side as you look out from Celtic's goal. Yeah, brilliant finish. Not much Barkas could do about it. I think I was critical of Barkas as well at the time, but it was a brilliant finish, and you've got to blame the defence and the midfielders who haven't closed them down. Second goal was a terrible defensive error by Elhamed, a player that I have praised all season and last, and he really should be doing better there. So, you know, taking your point on board there, Gary, but I think at this moment in time I'm a bit concerned about the defensive issues that we have, certainly at the centre, but also at right back and left back. Now, Red Scotland, and Neil I undoubtedly trust. And Neil Lennon has divided opinion since the day he came back to Celtic. I think the performance last year of winning two of the trophies, the third is still up for grabs, obviously, and we'll be playing Aberdeen at some stage in the next couple of months. You know, he turned a lot of people around. People were coming back online. People were engaging with the podcast and saying that they've changed their mind about Neil Lennon. He certainly is the man for the job. But, I mean, over the last couple of weeks actually since the season began, doubts have started creeping back in. Do you trust Neil Lennon to take us to 10 league titles in a row? If not, why not? Is it coming down to the interpersonal relationships that he has with certain players, some of whom may be the ones that are on this list of guys that want to leave? Did the same thing happen at Hibs? Did he lose the dressing room, to use a cliche? We'll continue to go through the messages as they come in via YouTube, Twitter and Facebook. Over the last few days, what I have noticed on the Bulletin is we'll be getting messages from other fans of other clubs, and I don't mind that, actually. I don't mind if Dundee United fans come in and say that it's a great podcast and they enjoyed the coverage and they've got a few points or questions. But obviously, from the other end of the city, if we're going to get any abusive messages, please highlight them to me. Sometimes I don't see them all coming through, but if you highlight them to me, I can block the users. And that's the only approach we can have, because we're not here to talk about some of the subjects that they're going to bring up. We're all about Celtic. That's the main concern that we have. TTV, Glasgow Rebel, I 100% back Lennon. If they want to leave, get the best price for the club and build again. Listen, I agree to a certain level with that comment, because I think going back to one of the earlier examples that I remember of a player making it known that they wanted to leave was John Collins back in the 90s. Cue Celtic Daz comments coming in. Yeah, I always look back to the 90s because it was a grim time for Celtic. It was a good time for music, but we got through it in the end. And I remember Collins making it quite clear, and Tommy Burns being quite disappointed at that. But once a player wants to leave the club, they've got to leave. So it's all about maximising their value, making them an asset for Celtic. And then, you know, Neil Lennon might want to build his own team, because you're looking at the 5 names I've mentioned. Of the 5, only Bolingoli was a Neil Lennon signing. And, I mean, his position is untenable because of what he's done during the lockdown. So there's absolutely no arguments there. I don't think anyone would disagree. But the other 4 players are not what you would perhaps call Neil Lennon players, even though when you look at Dembele, I think Lennon's shown a lot of faith in Dembele. I mean, he played him in Europe at the age of 16. He became Celtic's youngest ever player in European competition. Prior to Dembele, the youngest player was John McCluskey, elder brother of George, and a huge potential and a huge talent back in the 1970s. Unfortunately, he was forced to quit the game through injury and illness. But, you know, so I think Dembele has been treated particularly well by the club and by Neil Lennon, and it must be really disappointing when that happens. It's happened to Celtic before with Islam Feruz, and it looks as though it's history repeating itself. What do you think about Dembele if he is one of the players that wants to move on? Another message coming in from Gary Doonan. Everyone bar Christie, we can live with it. I agree with you there. I think when you start looking at players like Christie and the aforementioned McGregor, who's not on the list of guys that apparently want to leave, these are the boys you've got to move mountains to keep. Encham, I think he's a great player, very, very talented boy. If he wants to go, that's fine. We always knew that he was going to be using Celtic as a stepping stone, so that's fine. You let him go. We've already brought in Turnbull. Ayer, personally, I think it's too early for him, but if he wants to go and you get that kind of money, you let him go. And we strengthen in defence, something we need to do in any case. Gary, it's great to hear from you. It'd be brilliant if you could actually come and join us on the show. Send me a message, Facebook or Twitter, or email me and let me know when you can make it. And that's open for a lot of you guys and girls out there. We've not had many females on the show. Don't know what you're trying to say, but more than welcome. Get yourself in here into the studio and get involved in the discussion. A Celtic State of Mind was set up just over 3 years ago, actually, around the kitchen table. We're now in a studio. We're going out live, and that's been the big development this year. We're going out live and interactive. I won't tell you what influenced me to do that or what inspired me to do that. But we're going out live and interactive, and that is what we do. We also put out the shows at podcasts, and we're still looking to interview guests. So we're not changing what ACSOM was known for back in the day. We'll still be doing perhaps a weekly interview. And we've got some great guests lined up, not only for a Celtic State of Mind, but for a State of Mind. Next week we'll be joined by a Scottish football legend, an MBE. I won't tell you who it is, but all will be revealed next week. He'll be coming on and joining us live. So if you want to ask him some questions, please do so. Another point coming in from Glasgow Rebel. Great that you're getting involved via YouTube. For anyone out there who's watching on YouTube, if you've not subscribed, please do so, because you'll be getting notifications, etc. every time a Celtic State of Mind goes live. Glasgow Rebel, I heard 2 weeks ago Dembele asked to move on. We did have some, was it inside info probably, we did have some information that Dembele was unhappy. I find that astonishing. I really find that astonishing. And I think young footballers really need to be better advised. It doesn't always turn out the way that it has done for Billy Gilmour, moving that lock stock down south. That boy's had a great impact since he went down to Chelsea. It doesn't always work that way. Islam Feruz, we've mentioned him before. Celtic done a lot of work with Islam Feruz, in particular Tommy Burns. But unfortunately, he engineered a move down south. We had John Calhoun in the other week. John was actually Islam Feruz's agent, not at the time that he was transferred from Celtic. But obviously, off tape, John spoke to us about the other agent that came in before you knew it. Islam Feruz had other ambitions. It all comes down to money. And I think the biggest warning sign there is Islam Feruz is, I think, 24, 25. He's no longer in the game. So he's earning no money whatsoever from football. He's maybe had 5 years of decent wages. But do you want a 15 or 20 year career, or do you want 5 years of wages and virtually no appearances? I think that would be the message to Dembele. Red Scotland, Edward 2. I do not think he is an agitator. He'll leave, but not this season. Eddie has already said as much. Listen, I would love that to be the case. I think we've got a real talent in Edouard, and he's a type of player that I would put in the category of Ryan Christie and Callum McGregor, who I would go as far to say that they're indispensable. I think they're indispensable players. And, if we were to lose any of those three that I've mentioned, in Christie, McGregor or Edouard, I'd seriously worry about Celtic winning the league. I don't think they're replaceable. I think that's where I'm coming from. If we lose Encham, but we've already brought in Turnbull, different types of players, it's not like for like. I think that we have enough players who are effective enough in those positions. If we lose Ayer, similarly, I think we can actually get better for less than 27 million. So these guys, you cash in, you allow them to leave. Agitator, that's a great word. You don't want any agitators within the dressing room at Celtic Park. You can go down all the greats. Jock Stein talking about never allowing himself to fall in love with players for a number of reasons. They'll only let you down, but at the same time you can move them on when they need to be moved on. And also, Alex Ferguson spoken about bad eggs. You look at some of the players he moved who were potentially at the peak of their powers, but he didn't want them in the dressing room for whatever reason, and he moved them on. He might have regretted Jap Stam, might have regretted that. I think he mentioned that in one of his books, but more often than not, he had no regrets. So keep them coming. Dougie Cameron, get rid of the ones that want to go. Good riddance to them. Dougie, thanks for tuning in via YouTube. It's great to hear from you, sir. Let us know where you're coming in from. Where's all these questions coming from? We're based in Dalkeith, but we're going worldwide. A Celtic State of Mind are in the top 40 on a regular basis of around 17 different countries. And it's everywhere from Ireland to Venezuela. So get firing in with the questions. Let us know where you're from. What's your Celtic supporters club? And in actual fact, if you want your Celtic supporters club to come in and we'll get a bit of chat. We'll put you out on the live bulletin. Barca Boy, welcome back, Barca Boy. It's always welcome to see you coming in and getting involved. It all depends if they can be correctly replaced or if they can be professional while here. Absolutely right. Neil Lennon's already said he has no issue playing players who are unhappy. I think that's just part and parcel with the game these days. There's always somebody who's unhappy for one reason or other, and he'll play them if they are unhappy. I mean, Encham, in terms of his performance the other night, I know it wasn't a vintage Celtic European performance. Was he all that bad? Did he play like someone who didn't care? Sometimes his demeanour is such that it comes across that way, but so was Big Samaras. Sometimes he had that unfortunate knack of looking like he didn't care, but having spoken to some of his teammates and indeed his manager, he certainly did care. And I think that as long as the guys are playing and they're playing well and they're putting in the commitment on the park, We can't get the money that we want for them. There's no problem in continuing to play them. And going back to Glasgow Rebel, Christie will leave next summer. Well, let me tell you, there is a substantial sell-on clause in that deal should Christie leave, and the sell-on clause obviously is being inserted by Inverness Calais Thistle. It's 15%. So that's a club who would need the money. They would be happy for us to sell him when he's at the peak of his powers. I think Ryan Christie over the last couple of seasons has been one of our star performers. And I also think that he can get even better because I think he can add consistency into his game. The one thing I've been critical of this season is the terrible kind of results of his corner kicks, to the point where during the Dundee United game I even suggested we shouldn't flight them in. We should play it short because we were getting nothing from the corners. Ryan Christie, I think, should stay. He's the one guy that if he's had his head turned, then you need to get it turned back in the right direction. And Colin Watt, welcome back in. Colin, you were here on the panel for the match day, giving us your usual input, which is always welcome. You're always welcome in the studio, Colin. I can imagine most players are bugging Lennon at the minute, using Lennon's own words. Not all down to players wanting to leave, more the poor performances so far this season. What do you think of that? There has been a few poor performances. Some people would suggest even that against Dundee United the signs were there. Obviously we dropped points against Kilmarnock very disappointingly, and that resulted in some guys getting dropped from the side, from the starting lineup. Ken Walsh. Ken, how are you doing? How are you keeping, Ken, over in Ireland? It's great to hear from you. You've been a long time supporter of a Celtic State of Mind, and long may that continue, sir. Has Lennon lost the dressing room? Great question. Or is it just these few players? If players want to go, let them go. I've obviously had a wee look at that, Ken, and I would agree. If a player doesn't want to play for either Neil Lennon or Celtic, then you let them go. Messages coming in from Facebook as well. Hi Paul, hope all is well. Everything's well here. Got a wee cold, a wee dose of the sniffles. Don't worry, it's not the dreaded COVID, just a wee bit of the lurgy, and hopefully that will be a lot better by Sunday's game, because we will be here covering the match on Sunday as well. I hope you're well as well. Of your 5 named, let them all go sooner rather than later. Just ensure we replace them. Spot on. We need new defenders in anyway. I think that much is clear. The biggest issue we had on Wednesday night, and there were many issues, is that even though Neil Lennon got the team selection wrong, even though he started without a recognised striker, even though it took him 78 minutes to put a striker on, despite the fact that we had £8 million worth of strikers sitting on the bench, it all came down to poor defending. The 2 goals came down to poor defending. We didn't close down the first goal, and in the second goal, Edouard should never have allowed that player to make up so much distance. And then Barkas should never have been beaten at his near post as he was. I asked the question, was Al-Hamed looking at the fact that he'd already been booked? Even then, I don't think so. It's not as though the guy ripped him for pace. Al-Hamed had the ball at his feet at one stage, could have booted it out the park, could have played it back to Barkas to clear it. It was just downright poor defending, and defending that I wouldn't expect from Al-Hamed, because generally speaking, he's the coolest player we've got at the back. Coming forward, he's very effective. As a defender, he's very effective as well. Any of the statos out there could maybe back that up. Alan Morrison, for example, does a lot of the Celtic by number stuff for a Celtic State of Mind, and he might be able to give us some stats on Al-Hamed's defensive qualities. Sometimes you're surprised with these things. For example, you might not be surprised to hear that Frimpong's not a great defender, but on the flip side, Maurice Boyer is, when you look at the stats. So it's all about opinions as well, because I know that Colin Watt, for example, who made a point just a moment ago, was not a big fan of Maurice Boyer. But what I would say is Boyer is coming on the podcast very, very soon, so maybe you'll be able to ask him some questions when we do that. And we've got another message this time from Chris Nelson, who is massively concerned about the constant failures by the manager, and it's time to go. It's time to go for Neil Lennon. Well, I would like to cast my mind back to 2 occasions since Lenny come back as a manager. The first one, after the Hearts Cup final, which was not a vintage performance by any stretch of the imagination. And we're watching that game, and we were saved by some moments of magic by French Eddie, Odsonne Edouard, who won the game for us that day. And unfortunately, the now departed Lustig played his last ball on a Celtic jersey by laying on the... I say unfortunate, it was fortunate on the day that he laid on the winner. Walking back to the Beechwood that day, where I had a parking ticket, which I didn't care about because we just won the treble, there was a lot of people very disappointed. I could hear it. People were discussing the fact that Neil Lennon had been given the job. And he proved them all wrong. He actually proved them all wrong. Now, going back to last season, December 29th, I think it was, at Celtic Park, and we're defeated by Rangers, who go top of the league. And we're going into the winter break at that point, and there was a real air of despondency and disappointment around the biggest section, probably all the Celtic fans. And I remember at that time that people were asking for Lennon to go. He turned that round as well. I'm now looking at probably the third situation since he's come into the club. And I was very critical yesterday of Neil Lennon. I'm a massive fan of Neil as a person, and as a football manager, I was a massive fan of him as a player. I've got a huge respect for Lennon because of what he's had to put up with as a Roman Catholic Northern Irishman in Scotland for years, decades in fact, as a player and as a manager. And there will always be a special place in my heart for Neil Lennon. I've met him on one occasion, and I thought he was highly intelligent. I thought he was very, very witty. He's far more intellectual than people give him credit for. And so, over the board, I'm a big Neil Lennon fan. However, yesterday I was very critical of Neil Lennon. Some people might criticise me for that. Some people within close quarters of the club might criticise me for that. But we're an independent media company, and we can air our views. And we can air the views of the fans. Now, I don't think it was too dramatic yesterday. I blame Neil Lennon for the team selection, and I blamed him for us going out of Europe. There's a lot of things I'm unhappy with about the club and the signing policies, and also some of the players. However, I blame Neil Lennon for the European exit the other night. I don't know if Neil Lennon will care that that's my opinion, but that's certainly my opinion. Should we get rid of him? I'm going to say no. I don't think we should, because I believe that Neil Lennon will turn it around, just as he has done twice previously. We've been here before in Europe with Neil Lennon. We went on to what was quite a promising European run, 2 memorable victories against Lazio, 1 home and 1 away. And you never know, we might have some fine European nights this season. I don't think it completely wipes away the errors that were made just the other night, but obviously it may show that we can learn from those mistakes that I don't think we've learned from so far. So moving on to some of your other comments. We have loads of comments coming in. I'll try and work through as many of them as possible. And there's so many of them actually that it might be difficult to get through them all, but thank you all for commenting. And some of them I've actually left the screen because there's so many. Gaz, you're coming on as a Rangers fan. Let's see what you've got to say. I'm no trolling. Good, no hate. But if I'd have seen my team go out and put a dude out with no recognised striker, I'd want Gerrard out, no question. Now, as I said at the very top of the show, I don't mind anybody coming on this show and making comments as long as they're no trolling, because it's just tiresome. Nobody's going to say anything that's going to upset me on a personal level. It's just tiresome. So thank you, Gaz, for coming on and being sensible, and we will always answer any comments from anybody who comes on and is sensible. But I think going out with a team with no recognised striker, I'd want Gerrard out, no question. There are a lot of people saying that, Gaz. I'm saying I'm going to back Neil Lennon. I'm blaming him for the defeat, 100%. That's not going to change. I blame Neil Lennon for Celtic going out of Europe on Wednesday night. But I'm going to back him, and I'm going to back him because I think that in adversity, Neil Lennon's a better manager. I think that the comments made by Scott Brown shows that if there's any dissent in that changing room, then it's going to be sorted out. I think it can only be sorted out on this occasion if we get rid of a couple of the dissenters or the agitators. And if there's offers on the table for the likes of Ajer and Encham, then we need to take the money, particularly if it's going to bring in the region of £50 million. It sounds like grandiose figures, but that's the figures that have been mentioned. You bring that kind of money in and Celtic can start to rebuild. And in actual fact, Neil Lennon can continue to rebuild his side because most of the players mentioned are not players that he's brought in. So thank you guys for your comments. Would you like to see Celtic making a change on a managerial level? I think it would cause far too much friction across the board under these circumstances. Mark McCabe 1888, you're commenting via Twitter, thoughts on Turnbull going straight into the team? It wouldn't surprise me, actually, after Wednesday night. I can't see wholesale changes. I always think that's a bad move, to make wholesale changes, 4 or 5 changes, because then you've got a group of players that are not used to playing with each other. I think we need to try and get a settled team. We've not had that this season, sometimes through no fault of our own, it's got to be said. But I think we need to try and get some kind of semblance of first choice 11. What would your first choice 11 be? Would Turnbull be part of that? I'm going to throw it back out to you. Would you put him straight into the team? If Encham's one of the guys that wants a move, would you play Turnbull in his place? Let's hear from you. I'm open to suggestions. Kevin Graham, I know that you're commenting from Stirling. Where else is everybody else commenting from? This time of year, everyone is in a state of alert. All the big leagues are back on the 12th of September and clubs are still finalising plans and squads. Agents play on this like vultures following hyenas. Yeah, you're right. They are like vultures. And I think some of the English clubs are like vultures. Brendan Rodgers has been called many things that are in relation to certain animals and rodents. But he's like a vulture if he's going to come in for McGregor. What kind of deal is McGregor on? Did he get an improved deal under Rodgers? What kind of wages is someone like Callum McGregor on? Is he looking at someone like Encham and thinking, you're an agitator, I'm not. I just get on with my business. McGregor is undisputedly one of the most consistent players we've got, and he has been throughout the period of him breaking into the team 6 years ago. I think under Ronnie Deila, he was pretty inconsistent. He was in and out of the side. But since then, under Rodgers and under Lennon, McGregor is a pivotal member of that team and one that we need to look after. I would maybe have a look at that. If he's not got the kind of wages that Encham's got, then get rid of Encham and have a look at McGregor's deal and improve it if it needs improved, because we can't lose him. Hughes Stephen, we shouldn't let any of our best players go this year. We won't replace them with similar quality. I think when you look at Ajer, he's not been a first pick this season. I don't think Encham's been a first pick. Could we do better than Ajer? As much as I like him, as much as I think he is still developing, at this moment in time, yeah, we could. We could do better than Ajer because the guy has got a lot to his game that he needs to improve on. I love seeing Ajer picking the ball up and running 30 and 40 yards, going back to his days as a midfielder and creating a chance out of nothing, turning defence into attack, missing out the midfield sometimes. I love that part about his game. I don't think that he is dangerous enough at set pieces. He should be the type of guy, when you look at 17 corners in 2 games, how many of them were resulting in headers by Christopher Ajer? Because he's the type of guy that should be meeting headers from 17 corners. I also think he goes to ground far too easily. I think that he has a habit of putting his arms around players. He gives away needless free kicks time and time again. These are things that can be developed in a player, maybe apart from the aerial prowess. So I think he's still got room for improvement, but I also think that for much less than £27 million, we could replace him like for like, or even with a better player. Glasgow Rebel, any offer over 15 million for Ajer is what I would be looking for. Anymore, and we are robbing someone silly, but let's not tell them that, Glasgow Rebel, because if the Italian side are looking to buy him for something in the region of £27 million, bring it on, because that's a great fee for a player like Chris Ajer. Red Scotland, welcome back. You are contributing almost on a daily basis, so if not on a daily basis, so welcome back. Sell Ajer and sign Duffy and another centre-back. Sign a good left-back, sign a good right-winger. Turnbull will be a great player. Slap the rest into line and win the league. Listen, I think I might come back to that comment at some point in the future because I think it's exactly what we need to do. Ayer, yeah, let him go. I would also let Incham go, I've got to say. Turnbull, I think he'll be an excellent signing. I think what the boy's been through, a testament to him that he's came through that. And he got the move that he wanted. I think he got the move that we wanted as well. He was a popular choice when it looked as though we were going to sign him at the beginning of last season. He's been through a very difficult time through injuries. And he's got back on top. So brilliant. It's great to see him in a Celtic jersey. And I hope he's playing on Sunday. Graham Bell, welcome to the show, Graham. I'm happy with Christie's performance. However, I'm not happy with Neil basically defending playing him as a striker. Sick of players picking up a wage and wanting away. In Neil we trust. We have to. Well, I'm sick of guys that picking up a wage packet as well, who are not earning it. And I made a comment, I put out a tweet just the other week there, and it was about 4 players who we had shipped out, 3 of them on loan. One of them being Ibu Kouassi, who went out permanently. The other 3 was Shved, Bayo and Hendry. And I was critical because of those 4 players, they had only made 69 appearances between the 4 of them. They had cost us in the region of £8 million. And when you added on the wages and you actually looked at the minutes that they had played, they had cost us in the region of £250,000 for every 90 minutes that they actually played for Celtic Football Club. Now, a lot of people say to me, it's not your money or, it's not coming out your bank. Well, no, it's not directly, but it is the supporters who invest heavily in Celtic. And it's through times like this when we are investing in season tickets, for example, for games that we are unable to watch, but we still have the commitment to buy the season tickets. We've got season tickets on a virtual card or a virtual link that isn't working. I think the Celtic fans are entitled to be unhappy when that kind of money basically goes down the drain, down the Swanee. And for those 4 players, I would argue that virtually every penny has gone down the Swanee. There's many, many others. Just look at the last 9 years when we have been the dominant force in Scottish football. So many players have come in for several £1 million and they've not paid it back. They've not played enough. They've not been good enough. And the list goes on. Marvin Compere being a massive example. So many signings coming in the Brendan Rodgers era who certainly were not value for money. And I want the club to stop that. I really do. I felt and I praised the board and I praised Neil Lennon for the signing policy this transfer window, this pre-season, whereby we brought in Ayeti, Barkas and El Yunusi. And I believe that they're of a much higher calibre than the likes of Sved, Klamala, Soro, and some of the other mentioned players that have been commented on. And I felt that these are guys that would be first picks. And unfortunately, through fitness, Ayeti's not yet been a first pick. I can see him starting on Sunday. I hope Edouard's back. Through Facebook, you're hearing of a dressing room split. Split in 2, Lennon, Brown and Christie on one side, everyone else on the other, all down to broken promises. Well, I don't know what the broken promises would be, but we have heard them before. We've heard broken promises from Dembele, not Karamoko, but the real Dembele, the one that's actually done something for Celtic. And he was talking about broken promises. And he engineered a move via social media. He seems to now be a darling of the Celtic support. Let's not forget, regardless of what was going on behind the scenes, that I think Dembele checked out long before he actually was sold and left the building. Let's not forget that, because it's our money. It's our investment as Celtic supporters. We always go back to the time when Fergus McCann saved the club, and he did, and we give him loads of credit for that. But it was the money of the Celtic support that invested in the shares that rebuilt that club with a vision, and the management and the business prowess of Fergus McCann, granted, but it's the Celtic support. And so let's not forget that. Gary Doonan, it's always welcome to have you on a Celtic State of Mind. We've lost in the last 3 to 4 years Armstrong, Tierney and Dembele, Boyata, Roberts, and still continue to win trophies, and we will continue to do it. What's your thoughts on that? Because just those names you've mentioned, imagine the current Celtic side with Armstrong, Tierney, Dembele, Boyata and Roberts in it. Now that for me would be doing something in Europe. And I've said that before. We had a podcast where we were looking at your best 11 from the 9 in a row era. And the question was, could we do something in Europe? And what I mean is not just the group stages. Could we really progress? Could we go into the last 16, into the, hitherto unknown land of the Champions League? Could we move into the last 8? That would be the big question. But we have the policy of turning players round over a 3-year period, selling them on for profit. The exception in that case would obviously be Roberts, who we didn't sign permanently. Would you have him back? Would you have Paddy Roberts back? I keep asking the question. I think it's a boy who, again, might be a warning sign for somebody like Dembele, who wants to leave before he's actually achieved anything in the game. It's not always, the grass is not always greener. Look at Paddy Roberts. He's done nothing since he left Celtic, and he's moved to a few different clubs. Joe Porter, welcome back, Joe. I think you were blocked yesterday for a very short period because your name jumped up just as I was about to block someone. Not for having a Union Jack as their avatar, but for their comments. So welcome back. Winning is great, but you can imagine how boring it is for these foreign lads who have not grown up in Scotland and get the league to play teams like Hamilton, Livingston 3 to 4 times a season. It's a good point. On a much larger scale, Joe, I've asked the question this season, where do we go after this season? I still believe Celtic will win 10 in a row. If we start selling players like Christie and McGregor and Edouard, I start to worry. But where do we go after 10 in a row? Because the comment that you've made there, the big players, the really big players, the elite players, or the soon-to-be elite players like Edouard and Van Dijk and guys like that, would they continue to be happy to come to Celtic and play 4 times against Hamilton, Kilmarnock, Livingston? No disrespect to any of these clubs. Some of these clubs have and will take points from Celtic this season. But what I'm talking about, is that really the kind of level, the box office level that some of these guys want to play at? Well, the answer's no. Of course it isn't. They come to Celtic because we promise them that, they can use us as a platform, as a stepping stone. They can be exposed in the Champions League, just like Dembele, just like Kieran Tierney and Wanyama and Fraser Forster, and it goes on and on and on. Boyata, Denier, Virgil van Dijk, the list is almost endless these days. And it's going to be harder for us unless we make a big move. And I'm talking about moving out of Scottish football entirely. So we'll see how that goes. Colin Watt, welcome back, Colin. You can't stay away. Christie scored 1 goal after Christmas last season. Had a good 6 months, but then faded. Anything over £10 million is a great return. Right. Maybe a great return if you look at how much it cost us to bring Christie in. How much would it cost us to replace him, Colin? That's what I always look at. Could we replace Christie for £10 million? Can we even buy a £10 million player? That would be the question as well, because I know that we've spent £9 million on Edouard. Could we go out and buy a £10 million player, or would an English club match the bid and give them bigger wages? That would be a level that we don't know. We've not really operated at that level before. I don't think we could replace Christie for £10 million. And let's continue to hear from your Facebook, Twitter and YouTube accounts. And from Facebook, I think Lowell has slapped down Lenny with his outbursts. You can't now send out mixed messages by U-turning by saying that they are great lads, and is happy to play the want-away players that has agitated Lenny in the first place. If I was a fringe player and totally committed to the club, I would be raging if the manager picked his rebels. Rebels. They may well be rebels, but I think a real rebel is a type of player like Boyata, or even Dembele, who seems to be, and I'm talking about Moussa Dembele here, it seems to be now that someone controls his Twitter account. There's no way that Dembele sends tweets out. He might send some of them out, but there's no way that he sends all those tweets out. And what he's doing is he's playing up to the Celtic fans. That's what Dembele's doing, because let's not forget the circumstances around his departure from the club. He couldn't get away fast enough. Yeah, we did a good deal. Hopefully we've got a sell on. Some people say we do, some say we don't. But, he was an agitator. Boyata was an agitator. I think Neil Lennon made a mistake by saying what he said. If he's got an issue with certain players, then you deal with it in-house. I don't think it's wise to come out after a game and after defeat and make those comments. He's made comments about individual players this season. Ball and golly, couldn't argue with that. The boy was a disgrace with his actions during lockdown. Griffiths, I was pretty unhappy with those comments. Not because I know the work that Lee Griffiths was doing in his own time. I say in his own time, he's getting paid obviously as a professional. What I mean by that is when he was left back at home when the rest of the squad was in France and Lee was working on his fitness. Was he dedicated enough? Yeah, he was. He was dedicated enough. And I don't think it was wise to come out and make these comments at that time. And I don't think it was wise after Wednesday's defeat to come out and make me and many other Celtic fans concerned that there's a much deeper issue. Had we gone out to 2 terrible defensive errors, then I could take that. It's very disappointing, but I could take it. If we've gone out to poor selection by Neil Lennon, which he's admitted, and I agree with him, I could almost live with that, even though it's very difficult to swallow when he's done it before. But to come out and make out that there's mutiny in the camp, that's a much bigger concern. That's when people start asking the question, has Neil Lennon lost the dressing room? We've seen the comments today on the Bulletin. That's when perhaps someone has been giving us a rap on the knuckles. Don't come out and say that. We need to be together. It's all about togetherness. And the comment from a previous manager talking about the holy trinity of the management, the club and the support. And once you've got that holy trinity, you can move mountains. You can achieve invincible trebles. You can achieve trebles and quadruple trebles. You can make progress in Europe. At the moment, I feel as though it's fractured. The very fact that we're coming on this bulletin yesterday and today and criticising the club, criticising Neil Lennon, criticising players, whilst we're going for not only a quadruple treble this season, but a quintuplet treble. Is that what you would call it? Someone can maybe correct me if I'm wrong. 5 trebles in a row. Let's not forget we are going for that. I've got bigger ambitions. That is sheer domestic dominance. I've got bigger ambitions than that for Celtic on a personal level, and I talk about them all the time. Let's hear from John McCauley. The biggest problem is Lennon. He said he was happy with that performance. His interviews don't. Well, I don't know what the biggest problem is. I think it's a combination, and we asked who was to blame for our European exit the other day. Is it the players who are unhappy and creating an issue in the dressing room? Partly, yes it is. Is it Lennon for the ridiculous decision not to play a striker until 78 minutes into the game? Absolutely, yeah. And I think Neil Lennon took that on the chin right after the game. Is it the blame of Peter Lawwell and those that make the decisions at Celtic Park? Well, the minute you start criticising the highest echelons of Celtic, then as a media company, which a State of Mind is, and as an outlet, as a Celtic State of Mind is, then we will not be very popular at Celtic Football Club. But that's not why we're here. We're not here to be sycophantic, and we can't just say what the club want us to say. Be under no illusions. Some outlets do that. Some well-known and very popular Celtic so-called fan outlets definitely do that. We don't. Celtic State of Mind will never ever dance to anybody's tune except for the fans that come in and subscribe to us free and also contribute to us. And that's exactly what you are all doing here. So what we try to do is give an honest reflection of what the Celtic support is feeling and what they're saying. We don't have a script from anyone. We don't get emails from anyone to tell us what we can and can't cover. We'll cover anything that we feel the Celtic fans want to speak about. So just want to clear that up after some of the comments that we've had over the last wee while in relation to the bulletins. We're almost an hour in. I can't believe that you've managed to put up with me for a whole hour with a cold. But thank you all for joining us. There's so many amazing comments coming through from YouTube, Facebook, and also Twitter. And we're going to grow all the time. We're continually putting out new content. Listen, guys and girls, because you'll notice we've not had much females on the show. Hopefully that's not a personal thing. Please get in touch. Come into the studio. have a look around, get involved in the Bulletin, get involved in the match day. We want you to be involved. We have people who are involved in a Celtic State of Mind who are student journalists, and they come on here to get a bit of experience, broadcasting experience. This is a live broadcast. We also do podcasts. We do live events when we're allowed to, when we're back in the swing of things. And we also do video productions. And tonight we have our first video production of a show called The Salt and Sauce Show. I didn't even know what salt and sauce was, but apparently when you go into a chippy through here on the East Coast, that's what you ask for. You don't ask for that in Fife, as far as I'm concerned. Salt and vinegar is what you ask for in Fife. And so the show has got nothing to do with fish and chip shops, but what it does have is it's got a fantastic guest tonight, and we'll go out at 6 o'clock on YouTube, and the guest is Gareth Waugh. It's not a football show. Gareth is a Celtic fan. At some point he might come on to a Celtic State of Mind, but he is local. He's from Roslin, and he speaks about his comedy career. He talks about Scottish comedy. He talks about how hard it's been hit during the pandemic. He speaks about how hard he's been hit as an individual, as a comedian during the pandemic. So join us on YouTube tonight. We'll also be developing other football shows. Do you want to start up a Celtic show? Do you want to do something a wee bit different? Do you want to get a wee bit of experience in broadcasting and in media? Because we are here to give you that platform. Get in touch. We've had people coming on saying they want to set up a Stone Roses podcast. We've got all the gear. We've set it up. We've got a studio here waiting for you. Get in touch with me and we'll get something organised. If you want to visit us, get in touch. We'll get something organised. We'll have a look at a few more comments before we go, because I hate missing all these comments, but because there are so many coming through, inevitably I will miss some of them. Starman, welcome to the show via YouTube. Turnbull will be a fantastic signing. I hope he is. I like the commitment. I also like the fact that, you know, how disappointing would it have been a year ago when he failed that medical, you know, and perhaps he's had other offers, but he's waited on Celtic to come back in. And we've waited on him, he's waited on us. It's a match made in heaven. Hopefully we can see him at the weekend and he can get a game against his former club. But, you know, what I hope for is that you can all get involved. Please get involved in a Celtic State of Mind. We are now going out to 250,000 every single month. It's incredible that we've gone from the kitchen table to 250,000. I want to build that to 500,000. I want to build it to 1 million. I want to continue to build it. And we can do that with all your help. So all that's left for me to say is please tune in tonight at 6 o'clock on YouTube for our first show of the Salt and Sauce Show. And I will see you again on Sunday, where we will have a pre-match, a half-time and a post-match bulletin against Motherwell. Get involved. Thank you all for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.